Hello everyone at Cymatic TV, how you doing? This is going to be a video that goes into the background vibration, the longer term vibration in according to the sun, according to your emotions energy, your karmic path and etc. And this sort of energy here is not the sort of the ups and downs of life. So this is not a personal thing. You can obviously implement it within your personal life, but it is much more about the general longer term collective sort of vibration that's going through. And we surf off of this energy, very much how the solar system surfs off the energy that comes off the galaxy, the center of the galaxy. And we've seen that recently on Suspicious Observers. I don't know if you know Suspicious Observers. It's an absolutely brilliant channel. Go and have a look at it. I've been watching it for sort of 15 years or since it basically started. Ben's an amazing guy, very much more a science guy than anything else, but very worthwhile going to see and subscribing over there. Very worthwhile. Anyway, I'm going into how it affects us in the way through our elements and etc. So without further ado, let's jump straight on in there.
Don't believe, just know. Cymatic TV, turning vibration into reality.
So here we go. We've got this sunspot that I went into about the triple X flare thing that came off from the sun. Here it is sort of playing in front of us here in a particular sort of wavelength. This is why we see it yellow, and you can see it in different wavelengths. And this will become more and more important. What you should be observing here is the section around here that is very interesting. Now, you've got the sunspot, which is right in the center there, and that keeps flaring off as it did, produce several X flares in our sort of direction. But also on its cusp, as it goes through, you can see these tendrils of sort of plasma in a way. And this is really important. We're going to be going into how the sun actually works, how it transfers. There was the X flare there, just that point there. It just kicks in there, makes that really bright, shining light. And then you've got these little tendrils that you can see in this sort of section there. And this is really important as we go further. Let's just have a look and see how the sun works, as it were, and how all of these things are connected, and how they create a changing or a wave-like vibration that is constant within the Earth's energy, within your energy, within my energy, within the collective energy, within the trees, within the planets, within everything. Okay, so because it all connects together, and we do this in a very physical way on this planet as well. So here we see the sun here. We can see that sunspot above there. Now that was that filament eruption. Let me just bring that back there. You got that filament eruption, if you can just see on the top right hand side there, just up here, this section here where it flies off. Now that's going to be very important in the future. Here we have the X-flare sunspot here, and you can just see that little ribbon that's in that section there. That's a filament energy, and you can see filament energies around it as well. And if you imagine it's like a volcano, like a mud volcano, so it's erupting and creating these sort of, rings around the equator. And this is what the plasma does. And it's like the roots, as it were. It's like the roots of a tree, how it sort of binds itself to everything that is around it to hold its place. And this is what it does with the sunspot, to hold it under almost duress, under stress. And that's going to force the magnetic fields of the solar flare, the positive and negative, to mix. And then that's when we get the sort of like two cables on electric cables that short circuit. And that's when it blows off that eruption, which creates a spike in our energies, not only physically, we can see with our hearts and etc., but also within our emotions as well. And these filament energies, they are incredibly emotional. The sunspot, that eruption, that really that flashes that you can see, that does have emotional impacts upon us, but is much more in the sort of fire and air. So it's mental and doing and getting on, blah, 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 and all those sort of things like that, making things very zippy. And it's when we get the elements of the emotions, that's when we can mix the two together, and that's when we get a CME. So normally with this X flare, there would be an ejector of plasma in the direction of the Earth, and there wasn't. And this for an X6.3 flare it's not exceptional, but it is quite rare. And there is a reason for this, and the reason was we had right at the beginning, as we can see here, that filament energy that's just going off there, that's just releasing on the right hand side, which is connected also to other sort of sunspots. It's almost like a river of energy that goes between a sunspot and something else. And we can only see that ribbon around that sort of sunspot in particular wave frequencies. But let's just see where those energies are going to, see if it has some sort of connection with everything around us. So let's bring up another wavelength here. This is the 211 angstroms on the sun. And first things we can notice here is we've got two dark spaces on the sun. Now for me, they're called coronal holes. And it is like there's a hole in the clouds. Imagine if you're flying in the air and you're above the clouds and there is a break in the clouds and you can see right down to the Earth's surface. This is the same thing in the sun. So actually, the center of the sun is actually really dark. Is that right? Or is there just so much light that we can't actually see it? Question for another day. But for today, let's just go into sort of seeing that sequence again. We've got the right-hand side, the filament eruption, which releases, and that's the thing. This is the interesting thing. This is where we start connecting all the dots. Look at the space. Look at the space. Let me just get that perfect for you. Look at the space that is left behind. It's very similar to this coronal hole. So this is where we start understanding that one thing is starting to feed another and connect one thing to another. So let's go back to our sunspot. This is that vibrant energy that's going on on our sun. You can see it crackling up the top there with lots of little flashes. And as it starts churning off, let me just see here. This section here you want to be concentrating on. This is where I said the filament was coming out of the sunspot earlier on. Now you can see there's a little eruption and you can see it shimmering down the surface above the corona of the sun and above the clouds in a way of the sun. But look where it's heading. It's heading directly to that coronal hole. And as we go further on, it gets more and more important. We get the solar flare there, at that point there, and then it feeds a lot more with that there, feeds down to that spot that's down at the bottom there. If we go back to the other side, here we can see this is the coronal hole here. There's the flare, and it's arcing off in that direction. Look at it, it goes right down to it. It goes right down to it. Let's just see that there. It goes right down, hang on a second, it's just before there. It goes right down there. You can see it there now, connecting all the way from that sunspot all the way to the edge of that coronal hole. So this is the fire and the air, and it needs Earth. And that's what coronal holes are all about. If you want a fire, yes, you need air. Yes, you need a fire. Yeah. But more than anything else, you need wood. You need a carburant. You need carbon, basically, to burn, regardless of how you think it is. Yeah. Even if you're doing solar panels, you're burning carbon in a form or another. It's on another level, but it's within using the physical material. Okay. And so basically what's happening here is you've got that, and it's feeding in a way the Earth, because that will give it the return below it. As I said earlier on, we have these filament energies. Let me go back to this one here. Let me move on to this one here. Yeah. the sunspot creates that filament energies on the surface of the sun. Those filament energies are, as I say, emotional energies that connect to the coronal holes on the surface of the sun. That's how it goes in one direction. Okay? So there is the initial idea with the fire and the air. So if you think about your life, this is what it happens. You have this idea, you have this mental attribution, the air, you get the passion for that mental attribution, yeah, which is the fire. But then you're going to need carburant, or you're going to need money, or you're going to need something solid in order to complete that idea. Even if it's just an idea for going for a run or doing some exercise, you're still going to need eat in order to burn that carbon in order to do that desire or that sort of mental passionate thing that you want to do. So that's on the surface. You could also look at it in another way. If you were to say, like, look at it as that there being up the top there on this, being the dot in the yin, the white dot in the yin, I think it is, and the black dot in the yang. Yeah? So these two are connected and they drive one another. By being polar opposites, when one pushes one, the other then pushes itself. And it's continual and perpetual. And it's feeding itself. But there are moments of transitions. And this is where we come into the wave. As we can see down here, you get that beautiful version there. Let me just stop it there. Of that X-flare. Look at that. Absolutely beautiful. But as I said, there's a lot more light than there is sort of plasma attached to it. There's no real sort of emotions. And then you get the driving force now, you can see it, starts coming down towards that base at the sunspot. And there you can see that little filament there is starting to glow a little bit more because it's charging. It's charging and connecting to the edge. Because don't forget, the black dot is surrounded by white. And that's what it's doing. It's charging around the black spot. So it can actually then, what happens is, now this is my theory, okay? I've got nothing to prove this. I don't own satellites. I'm only watching other people's satellites. I take the idea that North American Indians say, like, if you want to know anything in the universe, just look outside. Just look around you and you'll know how a star works. And I understand that way of learning. And I think it is the ultimate way of learning, to be honest. You know, these satellites and what I'm looking at the sun and what we're looking at the sun together are just confirmations of what is already out there. You can look at it and find out the same sort of workings within trees. It is energy. That's why they say God made us in his own image or in their own image. It doesn't necessarily mean that God is a human. It means that God applies the same electromagnetic rules, the left and right hand rule, to everything. And we all apply this. So when you're looking at the sun, you could be looking at your own life. So let's just say you have that mental and energy that's really firing off. You're going to want some desires. And that's why the third eye and the throat chakra work in tandem with your sacrum. They are your fundamental desires. And then you're going to need a bit of fire, your solar plexus. And the last thing you're going to probably need in it, really, and that's when you come to the pinnacle of the situation, is the emotions. So you've got the idea to do a YouTube channel, to do a business, or to start a family, or to go for a run. Then you have your fundamental desire saying, yes, this will be a good thing. You take on the carbon, the fire, and then actually go ahead and get dressed or do whatever you got to do, get the money in order to start the business, YouTube channel or whatever. And then the emotion comes when you start doing it and you start enjoying what you're doing. And you can push it even further because, as I say, that is on the surface. Sunspot, filament energies, coronal hole. In the interior of the the sun, it works in the same way for me. Now, this is where we go round the other side. If you've been watching my other channel, which is called The Astro Flower, where I do tarot cards, this is very similar to what I would call the Hermit card. The Hermit card is a person who's a hermit, of course, but what that Hermit card does is he goes round the mountains, and that's like an objective in life, or a obstruction in life, depending on how you look at it. It will be the both are the same thing. And when he gets to the top, he can then pluck a star out of the sky, put it in a lantern, and then he can be guided by his dreams. And he can express that into the world he is living. Now, to get to the top of that mountain, he has to go round the dark side of the mountain. So at some point, you will no longer see my finger. It will be behind my other fingers. That's the mountain, of course. So it's the dark side of oneself. And that's the yin yang of life. And here what happens is as it feeds that coronal hole, that dark space that we had at the bottom, you get the filament energies that are inside the sun, magnetic fields, which then pull it round and charge or discharge the sunspot. It depends on the direction of the vibration over the longer term, as it were. So when I'm looking at the sun, and I'm looking at these X-flares, and I'm doing my energy updates, and I'm paying attention to the ley lines, I'm dowsing the ley lines, I'm feeling the energy from the earth, I'm getting messages from the earth, I'm looking at chakra sequences from the universal vibrations. When I'm looking at all of that stuff, I have to be aware as well of the transition, the longer term transition that is going on. So this flare may be a moment in time, but it's just encouraging the longer term plan. And the longer term plan is a transition into balance, into harmony. This is where the light is feeding the dark, so the dark can feed the light. Without the dark, the light no longer exists. If it's just light, you would never know where the light came from. I had a near-death experience, and you'll be able to find that on our channel. And when you get to the top, it's like that. There is no definition of space, distance, time, emotions. It's just pure. It's very bizarre to explain. It's a sensation of peace that you could never find elsewhere in life. But you have to be ready to go, okay? That's very important. Back to our sun. Yeah? So we can't have one without the other, and they feed each other. So what we're looking here on the overall energy here, and I think this is going to be a longer term thing, is moving from the light feeding the dark and the dark feeding the light in order to remain in a harmonious space. So the energy that's coming towards the earth, it helps it to be a little bit more vibrant, so then it can confront life that is around us, that it is around the world. And we have the same thing within us. And this is why sometimes we need to go to certain extremes, because when we go to certain extremes, we're completely out of balance. But then we make our way back to the original point, which brings us into that moment of balance, which triggers another extreme. And you can look at this in both ways. It can be a positive one, extreme, and it can be a negative one. That really depends upon how you engage with this longer term sort of vibration. Seeing the transition from one to the other without any form of judgment. Saying light is better than dark. You know, that's not how it works, people. You know, that eternal war that everybody thinks we're doing is not. Yeah, I believe there's competition, without doubt. But that competition can be really, really healthy for everybody concerned. I will be going into a little bit more into depths. If you want to know about your star sign, I'll be going to a little bit more into depths of how that can affect you and your star signs, and also your tarot readings on the astro flower. There'll be a special video on that. It's coming out after this, so it may not be linked as yet when you see this video above my head, but the channel is linked in the description below. Thank you very much for being here. I hope this helps you out. I'm going to do more of these videos of interpreting the sun. I hope this helps you out to sort of see the greater vibration, so it allows you to bathe and enjoy yourself in that vibration rather than getting disappointed or swept away by the vibrations. Okay? In the meantime, don't forget, life should be fun, so please do enjoy.